The Origins podcast is supported by listeners like you. If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting it on Patreon. Subscribers also get access to full video of each episode, as well as bonus content and exclusive perks. Science and culture, together. Visit us at patreon.com/originspodcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Origins podcast. I'm your host, Lawrence Krauss. In this episode, I'll talk to my good friend, Penn Jillette, the famous magician, writer, comedian, atheist, and filmmaker. What you may not know about Penn is that he actually reads more widely and thoughtfully than almost anyone I've ever met, and is also one of the most rigorously ethical people I know. I wanted this opportunity to have a personal conversation with Penn about a wide range of issues, from science and politics to freedom and liberty, as well as free speech. And I also wanted to talk to him about magic, humor, and honesty in performing. And I was able to surprise him with a little sleight of hand of my own. Patreon subscribers can find the full video of this program at patreon.com/originspodcast. I hope you enjoy this brash, quick, personal, and enlightening conversation with one of my favorite people, Penn Jillette. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's something I've been looking forward to. I've always wanted to have on this program an omnivorous intellect. and the definition of the word intellectual, people may not realize, but in my opinion, you are an intellectual. We'll try and display that.
I believe the best definition of intellectual I've ever heard is someone who's willing to change their mind with information. Isn't that a nice definition?
It is a great...
And it's important that to not just be change their mind.
With information.
Which means you don't need the emotion.
Yeah.
You can do it with information. And that's a separate skill.
Yes.
Being able to change your mind is a different skill than changing your mind with information.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you have changed your mind, I think, a few times.
I do, pretty often.
And you like information, but we'll get there. I do. But first, I want to start to go back in time. Why magic?
I think I never chose magic.
It chose you? No,
I had many children have a romance with magic.
Yeah, sure.
I had quite the opposite. I disliked it. I cared and still care desperately and maybe even in a silly way about the truth. I care about it very much. And the idea that there was a profession where people gave false information drove me crazy. And so when, you may not know this because no one in the world does, but the act that was on after the Beatles was a magician.
Oh, no, I don't remember. I watched it. I was alive then, but okay.
Yeah. And, it's always really funny because never, ever remembered. But on Ed Sullivan. And I would watch television to see the rock and roll bands and ignored the magicians. And I was a juggler. And jugglers, although they're the same strata, the bottom of show business, they entirely different philosophical thing. You want all your skill to show in juggling. You want your skill to be hidden in magic. And there was an event that I believe, and that I'm obsessed with this. I've told this story so many times that we know that it's not true in the details.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
But emotionally, it's maybe one of my origin stories. There's a guy named Kreskin, still around.
I know him, Canadian, as a matter of fact.
Mind reader, supposedly. And he came out with a show that he would do. He didn't do it on Carson because Carson hated him. But there was some show he did where he came out and demonstrated mind reading ability and talked about the science of this. At that time, the best I can figure from when the game was released and so on, and going back and doing a little bit of forensics, I was probably 13.
Okay.
He came out with that. I was very into science, crazy into science. I read science all the time. I love science, and that was going to be my life. And I watched him do this scientific experiment as he presented it on TV. Mm. And he had this ESP kit that he sold.
Yeah,
which was
I remember that.
Which was a little pendulum with the idiomatic movements and the ESP cards. And my parents, my dad was a jail guard. Uh-huh. I have a wonderful relationship with my parents. They were not wealthy.
Sure.
But this was science. Mm-hmm. So I could buy this ESP kit. So I bought the ESP kit. My sister, much older than me, she was 23 when I was born. Wow. So I was raised essentially as an only child with my sister living in town. So my mom and dad every night would run through this stupid ESP kit with me. I kept all the records and kept everything carefully and did all the graphs and all the science. And then as luck would have it, I was very into juggling. The juggling section of the library, if you remember your Dewey Decimal System, is...
it's ingrained.
Very, very close to religion, by the way. All in the 900s, I think. And juggling is near the magic, right? So
I remember that.
I saw a book by Dunninger, and just kind of thumbing through it, and the tricks started to look similar to what Kreskin had done as ESP. And I finally looked through and found the trick. And my reaction was so inappropriate.
You had an inappropriate reaction? I can't believe it. I
was heartbroken. I was destroyed.
Yeah.
The fact that a scientist, now putting this in my terms for them, the fact that a scientist went on TV and lied to me, inconsolable, and embarrassed in front of my parents. Mom and Dad, I was making you do this, and it was all stupid, it was all jive. And I went from, and this is absolutely true, from straight A's in science to flunking. Wow. To being directly to my science teacher, I want nothing to do with you people, you lie to people.
Wow.
And my entire school career changed there. And I went from a straight A student to flunking the rest. That was the demarcation.
Wow.
And my hatred for magicians and scientists, who to me were the same. You got to see this all as a 12-year-old.
Sure, absolutely. With no background, no perspective of what the difference is.
And then through a kind of uninteresting series of events, I met Teller. And Teller simply said to me, he said, you can do magic without lying. He said, you can say, we're going to do this, we're going to play around with this, but you can do it. And Teller also said something to me that was so insane. That's a conversation we've still been having to this day. Teller said magic is essentially an intellectual art form. It has to be intellectual because it happens at the intellectual level.
Yeah.
It's intellectual in a way that music has intellect added onto it. Dance has intellect added onto it. Even writing has intellect added onto it. But magic is actually happening in the intellect.
Yeah.
It is experimenting. If you wanted to be pretentious, and boy, I do.
Yeah, I know
you would say that magic is playful epistemological study, right? You're deciding, how do we ascertain what's true?
I want to continue. This is fascinating, but would you say it's kind of like humor then, which is another thing? Humor also happens completely in the intellect.
Yes, it is like that, except humor's subject is not the very thing it's talking about. Magic is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Its subject is actually what you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay. There's no turns on it. There's no twists on it. And Teller and I, Jerry Seinfeld, 30 years ago, gave me permission to use this line as my own.
Okay.
He said, you quote it all the time. You don't have to say Jerry Seinfeld.
But you're doing
Just
it because
take
you're
it.
an honest man.
But every time I do it, Jerry Seinfeld said, all magic is, here's a quarter, now it's gone, you're a jerk, now it's back, you're an asshole, show's over. What that means to me is that magic always insults the audience on several different levels. On the one level, here's a quarter, now it's gone, you're a jerk. On the other level of, I just got back from my studies in China, and here's what I discovered. It also insults them in, torturing women in front of Mylar. Tacky, tasteless. There's all this this level because just changing at this point. We're right at the cusp of this changing. But up until now, essentially a masculine art form that is built on some of the bad parts of adolescent boys. Not that there are any good parts of adolescent boys, but
the worst parts
really builds upon them because it's this kind of us and them, and I know this and you don't, and I can fool you. And Teller and I became fascinated with could we do a magic show with really good tricks? I mean, that's important. With really good tricks that didn't insult the audience, that I could just come out and say, we're going to do this, and also follow a rule that is the most stringent rule we put on ourselves that we have not always followed. We fail. We fall short of this. Although the show we have now, damn close.
Okay.
I want to follow the sawing a person in half rule, which is by the way, this the stuff that I'm telling you is not at all magic culture. This is strictly Penn and Teller culture.
That's what I want to hear about.
When you ostensibly saw a human being in half on stage in a magic show, nobody, and to be careful, I mean nobody, maybe someone very young or extremely mentally ill, but we can just say nobody leaves the theater believing they witnessed a murder. No one leaves the theater that way. That's my rule for every trick in the show. No one should leave the theater believing something that I know not to be true.
That's a very important rule.
Really hard.
Yeah.
Because I want to tell you that I'm doing certain mind reading things by reading your body language, but I'm not. And I want to tell you this thing is a memory thing, but it's not. And I want to tell you that person, but it's not. Now, I can lie to you during a trick, as long as the end of it.
It's on the end of it,
And I can also don't have to tell you how it's done. You just can't leave the theater believing something that I know not to be true that I told you was.
This relates, by the way, I want to get
very hard.
It is very hard.
Wicked hard.
This relates to a quote that I think that I read in something you wrote. But first I should say, interesting when you talk about the worst in adolescent boys, because you and Teller, in many ways, are the least macho. I'm the least overtly macho people I know, in the sense of you're not adolescent. You may have the mind of an adolescent boy,
in a jar.
Yeah, in a jar. But in terms of macho-ness,
well, that's another one of the rules, which we say crudely. Women with big tits know it. We have never commented on anyone's appearance on stage
Absolutely.
ever. And I mean this: if you're a very, very attractive man or woman, or if you have a blue mohawk, or if you are a little person, or if we've had people on stage under 4 foot, we've had people on stage.
I've been to many of your shows, and I've always been amazed. They bring people up on stage, and it's ecumenical.
No comment.
No,
because they know everything about them. There's no surprise. There's no interest. There's nothing, and it's none of my fucking business.
Exactly.
And I've just done this thing that was also hard, and I did it because I knew it had to be done, but I was putting it off. I was putting it off for about a year. And it's harder than it seems at first. I have now made our show, and I hesitate to say this because I sometimes slip up for comedic reasons, for rhythm. But I believe our show is now completely gender neutral. And it's really hard because ladies and gentlemen has to go. And the other thing that's very hard for me is that, as you know, I'm very, very badly educated. And for that reason,
that's the first law
certain kinds of speaking are important to me. So using the plural third person for singular, fingernails on chalkboard to me. Because it's the way everybody in my neighborhood did that. I didn't want to. So I always want to say he or she. So saying they feels like it shows me as being stupid and uneducated, and I don't want to do that, but I now have realized that that's right. So I've gone through our show and made it so it's only they is the pronoun, and I use people's names, but I never say the man over here or he or she. And there's one or two places where rhythmically it's very hard to know that I mean that person when the line has to go chromatically.
Yeah.
And I'm fighting the poetic rhythm, just the prosody of it.
Yeah.
I'm fighting that so hard against what I know is right. But I think in the long run it's worth it. And one of the things that beat me up was I made... it happens.
Yeah.
I made a couple of missed calls gender-wise. And I got to tell you, it happened in the first bit of the show. And I was still going, motherfucker, by the end of the show. And after the show, it was like, standing ovation, 3,000 people. They come back to get my mics off, and I'm going, oh, that poor person.
Yeah. So that I was going to ask, so that's the reason? Is that
no, that wasn't the reason. The reason is it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that I said, Penn, hurry up, fix this, then that won't happen again to you.
Yeah, okay.
But, you work so, especially in a show, we're not doing a show like Letterman or Fallon.
Yeah,
we're doing a show. We do the same show many nights. So one of the joys of that is getting the exact sound of the words to be perfect.
Perfect, yeah.
Pop, 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 pop. I can put an iambic when I want it. I can hit this. I can do that. The accent is here. So when you say to me, "Oh, by the way, Penn, you're changing all your pronouns," the speaker in me rages.
Yeah.
But the humanitarian in me says, it's about fucking time. You should have probably done this in 1970.
Well, I mean, we'll get to that because what I've always, as being privileged to be your friend, the two things I know about you is that A, you're an incredible humanitarian, B, you're incredibly disciplined. I'm amazed at your discipline, but we'll get to that. Enough about Penn. Okay. But one thing, so you were talking about how to do a show, and I went on this segue because I wanted to hear this, but now I want to get back. How to do a show without without having the public have the wrong impression. There's a quote from your book that I think is interesting. One of your books, and it relates to Randi. You said Penn and Teller wouldn't be Penn and Teller without Randi, and he said you can spend your time studying how to lie, to use that to tell the truth. Mm-hmm. So tell me about that and Randi and in fact in that discussion of Randi's importance, you also I love the anecdote you told me about Randi. So do you remember that?
Which one?
Well, the one that related to after he told you that you were at the Randi Foundation and you did something.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, Randi, James Randi, really interesting cat.
Yeah.
And I see mistakes in Randi that I see myself repeating. Randi did not go to college. Okay. Randi did not finish high school, kind of like me. He finished high school on a plea bargain. Didn't really properly go through school, and his education was terrible. And he then discovered that he loved studying science on his own, loved learning things on his own. And then, like Houdini before him, he discovered that a lot of scientists were being hoodwinked by people doing magic tricks. And because of his lack of education, there was a huge amount of prejudice saying we don't need some piece of carny trash to come in here and tell us what this guy's doing. We're working on the way the mind interacts with metal. And he's going, you need some guy who knows how to do a switch, man.
I remember how much he affected me. He was the first person who told me this and then about science. The big problem of science, and I've seen it internally, is it makes the presumption that people are telling the truth.
Yes.
And the minute you lie, the scientists have no defense.
Well, that was it. Doing magic for Richard Feynman.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And Richard Feynman was a worldly guy. He was not an ivory tower kind of guy. Just brilliant. But you could tell that even doing a simple card trick for him, his mind did not want to go to the fact that what you were saying might not be true.
And I remember Randi saying, this is a famous story for him, but I remember hearing him say, when he was trying to show the scientists who were claiming they were discovering mind readers that, hey, I'm going to send these guys in, and I'm just going to say, if anyone asks you, are you lying and tricking? Say yes.
Yeah.
And no one ever bothered it because the scientists and science, and that's a sort of an Achilles heel of science is you assume researchers are telling the truth. When they lie, it takes a long time to recover that.
A long time.
Yeah, and
we're now getting and to me, one of the most fascinating things about science is that the whole thing is a set of procedures to stop you from lying to yourself.
Yeah, that's the science, because we know that we all do lie to ourselves, and it's built in to overcome the scientists. Science overcomes scientists. Like
so when you're obsessed with that, and then you actually have a real bad actor, you know what I mean? We're all working together. We're all holding hands, kumbaya. Yeah. We're all going to find a way to get rid of all our biases. Yeah. And one of the guys holding hands is palming off a card. You guys are screwed.
You were screwed. Exactly.
And then, I haven't seen this, because we're following in Randy's footsteps, but some very cruel things said to Randy. We don't want some high school dropout coming in here and telling us to do this stuff. And he was saying, I'm not going to tell you about anything except what the guy's doing under the table. You know what I mean? He's just doing this. And it really is funny because the scientists were being fooled with stuff that was so rudimentary. So deeply rudimentary. And one of the things, and some of the stuff so heartbreaking, this woman science writer was interviewing a spoon-bender guy. I don't know who it was.
Wasn't Uri Geller or something?
I'm not sure. Probably, but I don't know who it was exactly. Spoon-bending guy. And he had done this miracle for her. And Randy was saying, was he ever out of your sight? Was he ever this? And talking through the way I could talk you through if you saw a magic trick. Did you ever? And finally, like 5 times through the list, she said, well, there was that time when the coffee was spilled. And he said, what? And she said, oh, it was awful. He spilled scalding coffee down my front, and it burned my chest. And I was also embarrassed, and I turned and had to get cold water on it and change my shirt. And Randy said, and that was while he was holding the spoon. And she said, yes, but nobody would pour scalding coffee on my chest. And Randy went, you met the guy who would.
No, it's, I can understand
that. But you see, that wasn't even, for a scientist, that didn't happen.
Yeah, they wouldn't even presume it.
And it's I'm handing you this spoon, and now, there's over there. Okay, back to the spoon.
And I guess that's the cause of some of the reaction. When you say the most rudimentary things, can you imagine how these educated scientists must feel after the fact, knowing the most trivial ruse was worked on them?
But also there's this horribly offensive things that people do in magic. They're not even aware of it. And they'll say, I've heard different versions of this. I'm a really smart guy, and yet you fooled me.
Yeah.
And you go, well, what do? You program a machine code? While you were working on that, I was working on this.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're a surgeon. Yeah. And I worked on stuff too. That doesn't mean I can go in and do an
surgery.
Yeah. I can't. We do different things. That's one of the reasons the world works so well. And then, of course, the other side is just as bad, which is, I know nothing about. Anybody can fool me. You were really good.
That makes you feel great.
and the answer is very, very simple. You could just say, wow, that was good.
Yeah.
And you're done.
Then you're done. Exactly.
You don't have to put a fuck you before or after.
Yeah. But I like that phrase because you say it basically made you who you are, Randy's phrase, that you can study how to lie, to learn how to tell the truth. And did that really impact on both of you? Did it really, do you remember?
Teller gives me a great deal of credit because he says he had that, I'm a liar who tells the truth idea of magic. But he said that I'm the one who is steadfastly obsessed with it. I mean, there have been meetings we've had where Teller's gone, it'd be a really good trick. Can't we just, it would really fuck them good. And I kind of go, let me get a wording. And the other thing you can't do, and this is why my wording was so convoluted on the sawing woman in half. Because I will not say I have to ultimately tell the truth. Because there's this thing that mentalists, mind readers, whatever you want to call them, do, where they do weasel words and then believe they've told the truth.
Oh, I see.
I used my 5 senses to create an illusion of a 6th.
Okay.
Or they'll say, this is my favorite one. Everything I do, you could do with practice. which says I have mind reading hack.
Yeah.
And they'll tell you afterwards. They'll be very self-righteous and say, "Oh, I told them it was all a trick." And I go, "No, you didn't.
No.
You can't just tell them it's a trick. You have to tell them so they understand it."
Yeah.
And that's a really important distinction. So it means I'm saying they don't leave the theater believing something I know not to be true. Not that I told them the truth.
Yeah.
Those are very different things.
Yeah, those are very...
I'm taking full responsibility for your understanding, which is, hubris, certainly.
Yeah.
But it's a very lofty goal.
Okay, so he influenced you, but nevertheless, he told you this, and then you tried to lie to him.
And you talk about the busts?
Yeah. Why don't you tell the story? It's such a good story.
Well, Randi was very proud of having this bust of Houdini. And it was from a museum in Niagara Falls.
Oh, okay.
And it had burned down.
Oh, okay.
And Randi had the only copy of this bust of Houdini that was very, very famous. He was very, very proud of it. And this is a fairly recent story. This is just like maybe 20 years ago. But not ancient history. And we were visiting the educational foundation, and he had this bust here, and it was all in a case, and very, very proud of it. And Teller and I saw that, and I got an idea. I got a little idea up my head. So while Teller was talking to Randi, I went off into the other room and made a huge number of phone calls to find someone in Florida who would able to do casting, any sort of casting. And I found this B movie company where the people did casting. Now, of course, I have no reason to trust them except I trust everybody. Yeah. So I called them up and said, "Hi, this is Penn, and we're going to still call Penn and Teller. I want to break into James Randi's Center for Inquiry tonight, and I want to break into a case and take his cast of Houdini and make a copy of it. Can you do that in 8 hours?"
Wow. It's amazing you could find something, first of all.
And they said, "Well, I got stuff to do," and I pulled out the checkbook and kept upping the amount,
Until they suddenly found it was more.
Suddenly found they had nothing to do that night.
Yeah.
And then, Randi dropped me off at the hotel, right?
Yeah.
"Good night, Randi." Pick us up for breakfast the next morning. And then I ran back, met them in the parking lot. I'd scoped out the place. I broke in. And then I said, "We're going to open this case, and this is valuable, and we're going to make a copy of it." So they have all the plaster of Paris, and there I am with them for 6 hours.
Oh my God.
But I wanted to make sure I didn't want to lose the bust of Houdini.
Sure.
So we then had a negative.
Of course,
of it, and put it back in there and cleaned it up. And of course, there was plaster of Paris on everything,
everywhere.
Newspapers, and we're mopping up and everything else. And I send them off, and then I run back to the hotel, right? And I get up, and Randi comes and picks me up. We go out to breakfast. Nothing is said. We go in, and then 4 months later, 5 months later, Randi comes to visit us in Vegas. And he comes over to my house, and there are 30 busts of Houdini all over my house, in gold, in bronze, in plaster. And he goes over to Teller's, and they're all over the place. And then he goes backstage, and they're all over the place. And nothing is said. Nothing is said. I never say, "Hey, do you like this bust?" I never say anything. And Randi, at about bust number 70, Randi just goes, "Fuck you."
Oh, does he say that?
It's kind of quietly.
I don't know why I don't know why.
No.
Because you can get these things.
With absolute love.
I thought you could get those things in any airport. I just, I had a few myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, they're everywhere.
It's fabulous. Yeah, Randi, of course, Randi would not have even said, "Fuck you," until he'd figured out the whole thing.
Yeah.
He had to have the whole thing figured out. You know what I mean? Randi would not say, "How did you do that?"
Yeah.
That is not
Randi.
within Randi's ego.
Yeah.
So I had to say, "Yeah, Randi, that night." He went, "I know." Yeah. When was he alone? When could he have done it?
Yeah, that's right. Well, you have to figure this one out. Okay. Okay, look. That's I've been waiting to do that. I've been waiting to do that all week. So now my life is complete.
You can get on with the interview.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know how hard it was to concentrate on what you were saying. Another quote that I really liked from you is exceptions prove the rule. Talk about that. I was actually, I hate to say this. I found that remarkably profound. I mean, your discussion, it really impacted on me.
The fact that everybody used that wrong?
Yeah, everyone, it never had occurred to me. And you said a lot of things to me actually in the time I've known you, frankly, and honestly, that have caused me to say, I never thought of things that way.
Well, it's just a grammar thing.
Yeah.
But the exception proves the rule has always driven me crazy.
Yeah.
Because the way it's used colloquially, it is nonsense.
Yeah.
I mean, the exception destroys the rule. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
But the way it is actually meant in the proper translation is that if it says no parking 3 to 5 on Wednesday, it means there's parking other times.
Yeah, exactly.
If you say you can't play your music over 120 dB Monday through Friday, it means you can play it Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
And it's huge revelation to me.
It is. It really is.
Huge revelation.
Yeah.
And then it's a really sensible thing to say. Yeah. And it's a useful way to think about something, You can't touch me there means you can touch me somewhere else. We're not. Okay, let's go back to the parking.
Yeah. Parking is safer, I think, at this point. No, it's really an interesting and in the context of what you do, I think it's really neat. Yeah. In some sense, magic is some.
Well, there's a thing about magic, and you didn't ask me this, but I'm going to answer it anyway.
Good, and I'll pretend I did.
I've been thinking about this a lot lately. There's this thing that's very popular. Mm-hmm. Whenever shrinks and science people want to talk about magic, they always say it shows up the flaws in our thinking. It underlines the flaws in our thinking. And that is such bullshit. What magic does is it underlies how well our thinking works. I take this, I put into this hand. And you assume it goes into his hand.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Because if you don't assume that every time, you're wasting a lot of brain power. Because it's only not going to be true when you go to see that one stupid show in Vegas. That's the one time. Yeah. There's no way evolution had to prepare you for that.
Exactly.
So all this stuff where you just assume this, and there's all these people who teach magic going, we have to teach people not to make these assumptions. No. It's a celebration
of the fact.
Isn't it great that every time that goes across there, we think that? Isn't that great? And then I didn't do it. And look how surprised I am. Because it works so well.
Because evolution
works. Not because
works.
It's broken.
Yeah.
It's because it works well.
There are some people who don't, there's some people who for whom they don't follow that. Those people don't reproduce.
Exactly. Yeah. Those people are still spending a lot of time going, maybe it's still in that hand.
But natural selection's a wonderful thing.
That all of that stuff. And that's why the correlation between being fooled at magic and being stupid is so bothersome to me. Yeah. Because it really is a celebration of this kind of intellect and how we determine what's correct,
Yeah, well, and I think, I don't know if everyone relates this way. I know my wife feels I love to watch her watch magic, but I feel the same way. And maybe it's the same as humor. It titillates you. It literally does. It when you see that and it isn't what you expected, there's something about it that just causes such a buzz.
Well, Salvador Dali said, I won't get this quotation exactly right because I never do, but it's something along the lines of, why is it so seldom when I order a lobster in a restaurant, they bring me a phone book that's on fire? So little of what might happen does happen.
Yeah, that'd make a good trick sometimes.
Exactly. Believe me, we've talked about it. We just went to the Dali Museum, and I said to Teller, if I wear a top hat and you wear a big mustache and we're Dali and Magritte and we do a little surreal scene, it'll be wonderful.
Yeah.
Now all we need is a trick.
That's the basis.
But walking out with a top hat, I don't mean top, I mean derby.
The derby, of course, the Magritte derby. I love that. okay, so it's been a great discussion of magic, but I also know music. When did music come into your life and become so important? And was there ever a time when you thought of doing one versus the other? I mean, you talk about juggling, but...
Yes, I'm realizing more and more that the way I used to see music was mostly joining clubs. And I have learned and identifying and not virtue signaling, but tribe signaling.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of disillusioned with that. But I've gotten with jazz deeper into real music. But I really believe that we are dealt hands. And this big mystery that I have, which is that Guns N' Roses loved the Rolling Stones. And that really confuses me. Because Guns N' Roses loved the Rolling Stones. They loved the Rolling Stones, which means the Rolling Stones were doing a job that Guns N' Roses really appreciated. So why would they do that job?
Okay, well, okay, interesting.
So my thought was, I loved Bob Dylan. Still do.
Yeah, of course.
Loved the Velvet Underground. I love Frank Zappa.
Okay.
I listened to their music incessantly. I wanted to do that, and I kept going, man, the Velvet Underground, they do the Velvet Underground a lot better than I'm going to be able to. Boy, Bob Dylan, I'd love to play guitar. He does it better than
Bob
me.
Dylan pretty well.
Really well. And is there an angle? Is there an angle of something I can say to the world that is different than this? And then I would look at other people in music, and I'd say, they got perfect pitch, or there may be no such thing. Very good tonal memory.
Yeah.
I don't want to argue about the science of perfect pitch,
sure.
but very good tonal memory. They sing harmony naturally. They picked it up in their life. They just sing harmony naturally, like the Beatles would. They could just do that. Thing. They have a certain kind of dexterity. They have an affinity for that. They have really, really big ears. They really have the sense of that. I know I can do a lot of stuff well. I seem to be able to write a good turn of phrase. I seem to be able to hold people's attention on stage when I sing in a band or play in a band. I seem to be able to do all that. But if I go into this, I have to say to myself, and deep down inside I'm a capitalist, kind of overtly I'm a capitalist.
Yeah, sure.
I am deciding to compete with Bob Dylan.
Yeah, okay.
If I go into magic, I'm competing with Doug Henning. I can win. And Teller has this theory, which I think he's very generous in applying to me, that the only people that push an art form are the people who don't belong there and don't want to be there. Bach came in at the end of fugues. Everybody was sick of fugues. Bach came in then. Wrong place, wrong time. What you don't want to be is right in the pocket.
Okay.
Axl Rose is right in the pocket, which means he did great stuff, didn't push the form one bit. And I also am very, forgive me for being perhaps too honest, but I really wanted to feel like maybe I had something to say. I've never wanted a job in show business. I've wanted to do something interesting in show business. And there's a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are people that I know that say, I wanted to do a show in Vegas, which to me is nonsense.
Yeah.
How can you want to do a show? What show?
Yeah, exactly.
What show? I want to do a show. You know what I mean? It's like saying, I want to make something.
Yeah.
What do you want to make? Tell me that. So there's this nightmare that I have that I don't ever want to be, and sometimes I worry that I am. And that is when you picture, let's go with Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, okay.
A Guns N' Roses concert. You've got 30,000 people there. And a guy fights his way up to the front, which is difficult.
Yeah.
Fights his way to the front. Now he's got about a 5-foot gap full of bouncers.
Okay.
Security people that he's got to get across to get to the stage. Okay? And that's hard.
Yeah.
But he does that.
Okay.
He does that. Okay, so he's already accomplished something. 45 minutes of work, lots of jeopardy. He then gets onto the stage, and Axl Rose is away from the mic, and our hero, grabs the microphone. Now, he knows what's going to happen. Okay, he knows that 3 bouncers are going to grab him.
Yeah.
They're going to bring him off stage. As soon as they're out of public view. They're going to be very rough with him. He knows he's going to be thrown out the exit. He knows it's cold out there and he's not wearing a shirt. He knows his friends won't come out till the concert's over, that he can't get back in, and that he's got to wait there in the cold for his ride home, probably 2 hours.
Okay.
He knows all of that, right? He grabs the mic, and he now has, for 6 seconds, he has the full attention of 30,000 people, including Axl Rose.
Yeah.
And he goes, woohoo! That's what I don't want to do.
Yeah. That is a great way of thinking about it.
And I see so many people in show business that you say, you mean you fought through this, you went through the agents, you went through the auditions, you went through all of that, now you've got a public forum and you're going, woohoo!
Yeah, no, it's funny, in academia, I often try and compare because my life is very different than yours in many ways, but I've always thought the same thing. When I look at the people who become academic administrators, and I've been part of this in search committees and all of that, and I've been I was as chair of a department and all the rest. It's really weird because the last people you want to hire are the people that want that job. No, really.
Yeah.
And probably true for politicians. In fact, probably we'd all be better off if the people we elected were the people who didn't want to be elected.
You go through, this is one of those situations where if everything you can think of it's true for, it might also be true for the things you're not thinking of.
Yeah.
It's just that it's someone that fits right in the pocket. I mean, it's the perfect example is Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
Because, what you want is the Sex Pistols.
Yeah.
Who, they don't like the Beatles.
Yeah.
They don't like this. They're going to do something else. And if I'd have had an idea, if there'd been the feeling of rap coming along, if those first Rapper's Delight records had come out then, where pitch became a little less important, rhythm becomes a little more important, words become more important. Then maybe that would have shifted it. Had I not met Teller, that would certainly have shifted. That would certainly have pushed me into comedy. But Johnny Thompson, who's our mentor, recently died just 3 weeks ago. Johnny Thompson said that I was able to get the ideas in magic that he and Teller didn't think of because I hadn't been studying since I was 5.
Oh, I see.
He said that time when you were 5 to you were 18 that you weren't doing what all the rest of us were doing is actually a big help to us because it's able to pull you. What you need is a specific theory of mind to do magic.
Yeah.
Right. You need a specific theory of mind, and Teller, I believe, is the best alive right now. And of course I'm biased.
Yeah.
But there's also some evidence. Teller is the best at being able to guess what an audience, of course, an audience doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Audience is just a group of people.
Yeah.
But what an audience abstracted is going to notice on a stage. It is the only skill you need in magic, right? But Teller can say things that to me are supernatural. He can say things like, yeah, at that point you can put your left hand in your pocket and pull that out and no one's going to see.
Wow.
I'll go, why? You go, the whole attention's flowing, it's fine, it'll be natural. Just reach in, pull it out, we got it. I'll go, okay. And you just do that.
It works.
No one's paying attention. And Teller has developed that intuition, and I'm using that word, of course, with no supernatural feeling at all, real intuition.
Yeah.
He's developed that intuition for just what is going to fool people. What they're going to be thinking about.
I love the way, by the way, not a lot of people use those two words together, develop intuition. A lot of people
that's
think
all there is.
It's magic. It's literally magic. People have intuition.
Well, but
in science, you develop an intuition for what works and what doesn't work. It doesn't.
Reading about the fractals and the Mandelbrot.
Mandelbrot sets.
Mandelbrot sets. I was reading about people just staring at them. Thousands of them over and over again until they could go, yep, that's one.
Yeah. No. I mean, that's
developing intuition.
Yeah. And in fact, people often wonder why we put physics students through what we put them through in order to become physicists. Because, they don't, who the heck cares what a block sliding down in a plane? I mean, no one gives a damn about that. But what the point of that kind of apprenticeship, if you want to call it that, is to develop an intuition of what kind of techniques work, so that when you get to the point where we don't know the answer, then then they'll have developed intuition, because it doesn't come. I mean, of course, there's some people who naturally adapt to that better, and somehow their skills do that.
But just the simple sense of when if we're all sitting around pitching magic tricks, right? And we're gonna do a magic show with you. We're pitching stuff. You're gonna come up with stuff that can't be done, and we're gonna come up with stuff that we don't know how to do. And that difference is huge.
Yeah.
And I'll say to Teller all the time, can we get that over there? And Teller will go, yeah. And then someone else in the room says, how are we going to do it? We have no idea. We'll get to that. But we know we can do that.
Okay.
And then something else, we just, nope, can't do that. Can't do that at all. And it's just, we couldn't even tell you all the reasons it is. It's just really complicated. We can solve this problem. We can't solve this. And I believe that exact sentence, we can solve this problem, we can't solve this one, is all through physics and math and science.
Yeah. And actually, I don't know, this is interesting. Oh, wow, this is fascinating. Because to me, I've often said that when I was talking to physics students, that physics is all about solving problems when you don't know what the problem is. And most often, and we do students a disservice, in fact, by filling them for years and years and years, giving them problems that are exactly solvable, that can be exactly solved, that they are fully trusting can be exactly solved, and going ahead and do it. And then we put them out in the real world, whether it's in business or in finance or in physics, where nothing is exactly solvable.
Right.
And so what you have to do, and I wonder if this has happened to you in I'm sure it has in your act, but I'd like to hear an example if it happened. So in physics, often you start working on this problem and you realize you can't solve it. What you do is you end up turning it into a problem you can't solve. So when you've developed tricks, have you say, this is what we really want to do, and in the end, it ends up being over here?
That's always true. That's always true. And as a matter of fact, I have a artistic superstition that I'm in conflict with Teller. Teller is very easy using words like, we'll find where this bit wants to go. We'll feel where this bit wants to go. We'll get a sense of it. I get really bothered by that, because I believe that what you're doing in art is showing part of your heart to somebody.
Yeah.
So if you change the idea too much as you're going, you've lost that. Now, Teller would say, and would make an argument that I believe is correct, that because you're doing it, you're always expressing stuff that you feel.
Yeah.
And the finding it there, he's not saying there's a path laid down by someone else.
Yeah.
He's saying that we're just discovering through it. But I often do this useless exercise at the end of a trick going, yeah, that's what I started out with, kind of, sort of.
Oh, to make...
Yeah, that's where I got here, but it still has the soul of what I was doing.
Okay.
And it's just a cheat that I need to do, because I had this belief, because I'm from a small town and the first person I met in show business was me. I never knew anybody.
Really?
Never knew anybody in show. Not one person who had a job in the arts. Not at all.
Interesting.
Never. And so all this stuff came handed down to me, television and radio and records, as though it was from Olympus. And probably the two most profound things, one was the hating of Kreskin.
Yeah. Now I understand it. I never really knew that why there was such visceral hatred.
It's as I said, in one article I wrote about him, which you wanted to sue me for. In one article I wrote about him, I said, I have to keep talking about how he's wrong because I made a promise to a 12-year-old boy. Yeah. I'm going to keep that promise. I don't care anymore. But that boy still does.
Yeah.
And there might be another one out there who wants someone to say, it's full of shit, don't watch him. Okay?
Yeah.
But the other thing that was so important to me was Beatle bootlegs.
Oh, okay.
The first Beatle bootleg that came to Greenfield was a thing called Comeback, Kumback. It was outtakes from Let It Be, a little bit from Abbey Road, but mostly from Let It Be. I think it was maybe all Let It Be. And I had firmly believed, and I still can fall into this. I had believed that the Beatles would get the idea for Sgt. Pepper's in their head. They would talk about it, and they would get clearly what they wanted it to sound like. Every kazoo, every violin part, every vocal. They would get that clear in their head, then they would go into the studio with George Martin, and they would say, this is what has to be. We have to get this kind of crowd sound to start Sgt. Pepper's. Then we want an orchestra tuning up. And then we'll first have a kind of fuzz guitar come in, and then on beat 3, we'll have the drums come in. Okay. And they would lay that out, and they would then do it. And I would just go, this is the most perfect thing ever. And that was every record, Blonde on Blonde, Freak Out. I just believe that. And then Beatle Bootleg.
Okay.
$10 at Gribbon's Music Store. I go and I buy Come Back. When I find Mother Mary comes to me. Spin my let it be. Holy fuck! You mean you can work on this shit? You mean you don't, and then John singing the wrong lines?
Yeah.
What? What's he doing? And then George doing a completely inappropriate solo?
So that was
Paul singing out. I was like, oh, you get to try this stuff.
So that it didn't heartbreak you. It opened up a whole new word.
Totally inspired me. I mean, I want to say in this, please forgive me for this, but I kind of said, I can do this.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not telling you I can do Sgt. Pepper's.
Yeah.
But I can work in the arts.
Yeah. Okay. So that showed you it was accessible.
And I still go
really
crazy
important.
over this when, the new Blood on the Tracks, Bob Dylan bootleg came out with every single version of it. And I am fascinated by, this is all ties into one of my least favorite words, which is the word genius, which is another word for lazy. Someone that uses the word genius is someone who's lazy.
Yeah.
Because they want to say, oh, this guy can just do this.
Yeah.
And there's no guy who can just do this.
Yeah.
And, there was always this myth that was Bob Dylan did Blood on the Tracks. He was having fights with Sarah. They were going to get a divorce. He went into the studio. He poured his heart out. He wasn't quite happy with that. He added a band. Blood on the Tracks came out. It was just pure from his heart, just poured out. Then there were rumors that there was a notebook where Dylan took little notes and worked on it. And everybody heard about the notebook. Now he's given his archives to that new museum. There were 3 notebooks in tiny, tiny writing. Both sides of the page. Every single song on the album, every single word changed. Crossed out, added in, crossed out. They finally interviewed Bob Dylan and said, well, so this was just about your marriage break. He goes, I was reading Chekhov. And I was interested in whether short stories could be told out of time. And I was also studying painting, and the perspective idea of how that changes over time interested me. And I wanted to put that down in the words, and that's why I'm changing these things here and there. But weren't things terrible with Sarah? Yes. They were. But I was also working on a record.
Yeah, exactly. There's a wonderful parallel to someone else who's a hero of yours and a hero of mine, Richard Feynman. Because Richard Feynman looked like he was doing magic because whenever there was a conference or a problem, and people would say, they talk about it, and he'd go, well, this is the way to do it, or oh no, that won't work because of this, and it was like, whoa, and he loved. Portrayed that, but then not even when he died, but after he died, what you saw was 30,000 pages. He worked in, he solved every single problem. So in the end, it could say, look, it seems like it came out of his hand.
On the space shuttle, when he asked for the glass of ice water, he asked for a glass of ice water, and he drops the thing in. And it's in his book on that. There's a sentence in there that blows my mind where he says, I cheated a little. I tried it before.
Yeah.
Do you remember that sentence?
Yeah, of course.
I cheated a little, tried it before. But no one knew that.
Yeah.
He didn't say it.
It's because he was a showman.
Let's just get some ice water. Let's see what happens with this. He puts it in, and he acts surprised.
Yeah, he was a showman. I mean, he loved it. Well, because he loved to give that appearance. I mean, for whatever it was.
He loved to walk around like Art Carney.
Yeah, exactly.
He wanted you to think he was Art Carney.
Yeah, exactly.
But that was the thing with Tim's Vermeer.
Yeah.
That whole movie could be called Anti-Genius. You know, Vermeer worked harder than we thought he did.
Yeah.
And lazy people want to say, oh, yeah, Bob just grabs a guitar, he pours his heart out, and there it is. No, motherfucker. The problem is you aren't willing to put in the amount of time Bob put in. And that's why you're not. We haven't gotten to the talent yet.
Well, I was going to say there's a difference between genius and talent.
Yeah.
I mean, believe me, I could work for 1,000,000 hours. I couldn't be Bob Dylan because I don't have that talent. But I could probably solve some equations that Bob Dylan couldn't, even if he...
Sure, but neither one of you gets it full-blown from the mind of Zeus.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no such thing. That revelation nonsense is... I mean, it's hard work, and it...
But those bootlegs showed me that, because I believed in Greenfield, Massachusetts, at 14 years old, that Frank Zappa, Bob Dylan...
And it was inaccessible.
Geniuses.
Yeah, and it was inaccessible to you.
Completely. Not a chance.
Oh, that's good.
And then hearing him, all I need is hearing him fuck up.
But did that allow you did that allow you to be freer about music too, where you realized you couldn't? I've
always been, and still am, very self-conscious about music, because who wrote that great essay about learning something that you're way below your appreciation. You have to start out that way, and that's the difficult time of learning. Is it like Sedaris or somebody?
I forget by myself.
But you know the essay I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And that's really horrible.
Yeah.
There's that horrible time when you can see good and you can't do it.
Yeah.
You know, you can't quite get there. And with music, I'm afraid I listen so much and I keep developing in it so much that whatever I do, I mean, I did something. I started playing upright bass when I was 45 years old. There have been studies that have shown that you can't improve your intonation after the age of 45. I am a counterexample to that. I did improve my intonation.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it was. But when I was 45, my mom died. And I'm a real mama's boy. I'm very close to my dad too. But very close to both my parents. And the grief was overwhelming.
Yeah.
And for some reason, and to explain this psychologically is way beyond me.
Me too.
For some reason, I desperately wanted to start to learn something that I knew I couldn't be best at. Because everything else I started, I didn't know I wouldn't be best at.
Yeah.
Turns out I wasn't the best juggler. Turns out I wasn't the best juggler. But I didn't know that when I started.
Yeah, there's that hope.
I was 14 or 15.
Yeah.
But at 45, you learn to play upright bass. You know. There is no way. Impossible. Winning the lottery 10 times in a row on the same day, you're not going to be the best bass player, and yet you're going to learn it anyway. And I got a really good teacher, and I practiced till my fingers bled all the time. And now I'm 64 years old. It's almost 20 years. And I am not good, but I am better than I ever thought I'd be. And Jonesy tells me you could be a gigging bass player if you ever wanted to, cut your income by 5 orders of magnitude. You could gig as a bass player.
That's heartening because when I was listening to your story about music, again it resonated with me. I did degrees in 1 degree in mathematics and 1 degree in physics, and I was good in math and pretty good, pretty good, and good at physics. And the difference was for me, I could do math, I could do any problems, I could really good grades, but in physics I could always see where I was going down the road, and I couldn't in math. In math I thought, okay, I'm doing this, but I don't know where to go next. And so I always loved physics anyway, and it was fine to go into physics. And I was always amazed at mathematicians who I knew who were much better mathematicians than me. And physics, the math of physics seems pretty easy. And I thought, well, for these guys, physics must be trivial. And they couldn't do it. But I've always wanted, and so I'm happy I became a theoretical physicist, which is mathematics and physics. But I've always had this hope even when I was younger, I was saying, I just want to go back and I want to solve Fermat's last theorem. And now it's been solved. So, but but it's interesting to know that there's hope, although I'm 64 too, so maybe I'd have to violate.
Yeah, it's really, one thing I have been, do you know another language?
Yeah, I do speak French.
Canadian.
Yeah.
I think I told you about this. I haven't dug in. I have no talent in it at all.
It gets harder.
Oh, I know.
I wanted to learn Portuguese because Feynman did. Yeah, no, and it's really hard.
Yeah, I know. And, I got a book called, What Language to Learn.
Yeah.
And it rates them all, And it turns out, and you have to be careful when you're saying this because I don't mean to insult anybody, but supposedly the best literature is in English.
Interesting.
And that's just true. Chinese doesn't have that good a literature. And there's all sorts of theories for that. One of the theories is that we have such sloppiness in English that there's many ways to say things. And Chinese is a little more
precise.
Precise, yeah. So it fucks up the literature. And so it's what language do you want to, but the language that I could learn that could let me speak to the most people I can't speak to in English, which is one of my definitions. It comes down to Mandarin, Arabic, Cantonese, the really hard ones.
Yeah, the really hard ones.
And I've thought, well, man, if I could learn. First of all, I got a bug up my ass that I wanted to learn Kong.
Oh, yeah.
And then I read that nobody has successfully learned it because it's so hard. Yeah. And that I could talk to nobody except like five guys at my Starbucks. But wouldn't it be great if you said, we have Penn on, he's a magician, juggler, comedian, speaks Kong. Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
But I threw that one out.
Yeah, that's all right.
But I figured Arabic puts me on every watch list I'm not already on. But I started it. I got in touch with some people to teach me and went, boy, is this pissing up a rope.
It's interesting when you talked about the fact that, the Kreskin thing you kept, you did immaculate record keeping and everything else. I know that you're a compulsive record.
I do.
Yeah, but you're also, you're dedicated. You continue to do things. And that's why it surprises me because I'm kind of a dilettante in a lot of things, and the discipline that's required at this time in my life to learn another language, I keep wanting to, but I think you have the discipline.
Boy, it's just I just go, boy, it's all such a long road. And then I was in China, and there I was. People were speaking to me in English who had been studying English for a long while, and they were struggling so, and I went, boy, these guys have been working really, really hard, and it's not fun to talk to them, and I'm going to be there for so long. And meanwhile, English is winning. I happen to luck out on that one.
Yeah, we did.
But it's like a rock in my shoe. Like learning to play an instrument well and read music was a rock in my shoe. I got that out of my shoe.
That's amazing because
all I've got is just. And, my friend Tim Jennison of Tim's Vermeer, he says, they say one man, one language, one language, one man, two languages, two men. He said, you learn another language, you think different.
Yeah, you do.
Think better.
Yeah, I don't know whether I think better, but when I got to the point of speaking French where I could make jokes in French, which is the hardest thing, but I was still a different person when I was at a party.
And you can say shoehorn and Brussels sprouts?
Who? What?
Shoehorn and Brussels sprouts. Can you say those in French?
French? No.
A friend of mine who spoke 8 languages says that was his definition of fluent.
Oh, okay.
Shoehorn and Brussels sprouts.
Never needed to use either. Okay.
Didn't say you needed it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. But I got the language. But for me, it's that the same thing as music. We talked about that. I've played miserably a whole bunch of. I just wish I could just play one instrument well.
Yeah. There's moments. They're very rare for me still when I actually feel like I'm playing jazz.
Oh, wow.
And it's unbelievable. It's just, wow. I just, you just kind of flow into it and it's great.
Well, I'm glad you have that. I'm glad you have.
It's
but
good.
Now, when I want to go back to that 12-year-old boy because you had the makings, and you still do, in many ways, of a good scientist. I mean, and I know you're fascinated by something, but it's not just this. The immaculate record keeping, the precision would have made you a great experimental physicist.
I will tell you, in taking in that inventory, and I really did this. I mean, I guess I seem so conniving, but I was in a dead factory town.
Yeah,
I was surrounded by fellow children who went to prison or worked in factories. People did not do well in my town.
Yeah.
I'm not painting it at Appalachia as its worst, but it was not a town where everybody was getting out and going great. And I was really interested in science. And I said, guys who are really good at science, they do 3-digit multiplication in their head. They do really smart stuff. I know I'm fairly smart. I'm not smart enough. If I go into science, I'm sure I can get the coffee and I can back up the records and I can keep the tables and I can do all of that. I believe that I'm trying very hard to be honest and not falsely modest. I thought I could get a job in science, but I thought I'd get a better job in magic.
Yeah, well, it worked.
I just didn't. And then, it was very hard for my mom and dad because my mom and dad, my dad didn't finish high school. And my mom and dad didn't go to college. Yeah. And they believed that everything they didn't get was because they didn't go to college. Yeah. And they saved for me to go to college. And then I did very well on my SATs and got a full scholarship.
And you didn't?
To go wherever I wanted.
And you didn't?
And I didn't go. And that was the hardest thing for my mom. And it wasn't until MIT made me a visiting scholar that my dad kind of went, okay, you can do this.
It's funny, the same thing. Neither of my parents finished high school and obviously didn't go to college. And of course, in my case, my mother. It was just my case was more obvious. My mother wanted me to be a doctor, and for years when I got my first, I got a very fancy job at Harvard, and I remember it was the best job in the world. It really was. And I phoned my mom the day I got it, and my then wife was there, and I went out, and my mother phoned her back and said, "You can still go to medical school."
Oh yeah,
yeah, she was. But then then later on, now she's very proud, so it all worked out all right.
Yeah.
It's very hard. It really is
very hard. But did you say physicist, physician?
Yeah.
Could you kind of do?
My uncle would say, "Physicist, is that someone who gives someone physics?" They didn't. My mother said, "What do you want to get? Chalk on your hands? What is this?" Anyway, it's an interesting.
I love. You don't know the joy it fills me that you could disappoint your parents with your education. That's fabulous.
Good.
Because we do this. I see myself doing it. I have lots of friends who are very high up in academics that just go, Penn, you could have just gone to college and you'd be able to shut up about college because you still believe stuff we believed at 18. You were never disabused of that. And really, it would take you one semester.
Exactly. But I want to, since I've known you, I get lots of great questions from you. You were... Why? What I was going to ask is, so at one point you turned away from science because Kreskin had convinced you it was bullshit because it wasn't different than lying. When did it come back?
That might have also been Randi. I just started because reading Flim Flam, which was Randi's big book about. I realized that if I was going to get into arguments. I'm putting this in a very crass way.
Sure.
I was going to get into arguments about psychic events. I needed to know some statistics.
Okay.
And I didn't know any statistics.
Okay.
I cannot exaggerate how bad my school was. If you saw what I came out of 10th grade with,
I have
really no algebra.
Yeah.
None.
No, I have very low expectations. People have. I've taught many students. I have very low expectations.
No algebra.
Yeah, none.
So now I got to go back and read statistics, and then go, oh Christ, regression to the mean. All the stuff you could kind of grasp, but at a certain point, you got to do some of the numbers.
Yeah, you have to do numbers
at some point.
Yeah, you have to.
And so that led to this, and then I would like stuff. Like I would read when I would read it all started with skepticism and all started with atheism. and I'd read, the anthropogenic theory of this, and I'd go, oh, that's interesting. Oh, they cite this book. Well, I'll read that book, and it just flows out from there. And I get interested in something and read the books. And
I'm amazed. I'm just so impressed because people don't realize. I mean, I'm quite envious, and I'm not sure envious is the word, but really impressed all the time at the level of the number of things you read and the fact that you just follow it up. And when you ask me questions and I think, and then you want to know further stuff, it pushes me, and I'm always
and then you find holes that are just phenomenal. I mean, I'm talking about from a proper liberal arts education.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about a very smart person with a very good education, like Stephen Fry.
Yeah, yeah.
Stephen Fry, when I'm talking to him and the conversation is flowing all over like it does, and I'll just see, oh, yeah, there's that whole Greek mythology thing that I didn't know enough about.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's this. And it's such the ideal of a liberal arts education, which is designed for a gentleman to be able to talk to his friends.
Yeah.
That's all it's designed for.
Yeah.
It was not designed to get a job.
To have good cocktail party conversation and be interesting.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
And there was this book, and I know that you don't even want to say these words, but about the time The Bell Curve came out, there was this idea that what you needed to know to read the New York Times.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And there was these whole theories that you had to get the word within a tenth of a second and know what it meant in context. And there was a book that came out that I haven't been able to find since then that just had the minimum you needed to know to read the New York Times. And because of that, and I'm so happy for electronic stuff. Because when I read the New York Times, I try to be so conscientious and click on every word I'm not sure of.
Oh, you see that?
I just go, I'm not exactly sure what that word means. And then people tell me you click on too much of your reading. I get it from context. I said, if you're getting it from context, you're not using the word. Getting the word from context is the stupidest thing in the world. You want to see what that word adds to the goddamn sentence. Right?
Yeah. You want to, no, but you have that. That's what I mean. It's this kind of rigor. Most people don't have the patience to do that.
So I try to say, well, I know a little more about this, know a little more about that. And then I just go, oh, someone mentioned Philip Roth.
Yeah.
God damn it. Everybody mentions Philip Roth.
Better read the book.
Everybody's sick of Philip Roth, but I didn't read him. God damn, what do you, okay, American Trilogy, motherfucker, I married a communist. Okay, I'm reading, shut up.
No, but I think there are two kinds of people, and maybe one of the reasons we resonate is I find it, I love the fact that what I've learned since I got my PhD far exceeds what I've learned before I got my PhD, even in physics, by the way. And I think there are two kinds of people. And maybe this sounds pompous. I don't know. You'll tell me. But there are people who really, when they hear something, when they realize there's something they don't know, are thrilled. Yeah. And there are people who are, when they realize there's something they don't know, are upset, I think.
Yeah.
And because the fact that there's so much more to know about the world is what keeps me going personally every day. In some sense, I kind of think that's the difference between religion and not, in the sense that the thrill of not knowing.
Well, yeah.
And Feynman said that. I'm not afraid of not knowing. And I think that
I don't know if you've ever heard the 10-to-1 model I have to do on fire eating.
No.
But I have this is just bragging.
Okay, good. I just did it too, so it's good.
Feynman, there was the monologue that closed our show on Broadway, closed our show off Broadway, and we did it also before that in L.A. And it was a final monologue I did about how to eat fire. I taught people how to eat fire.
Okay.
And I talked about what the carnival meant to me. And I had a section in there, which I won't do the whole thing, was I said, people often think that scientists don't like the mystery, want to end the mystery. And the fact is scientists are the ones that love the mystery.
Yeah, sure.
The people that don't like the mystery, the people that when there's a mystery there, they just believe the first thing they're told.
Yeah.
Or they make up something and believe that. Or they believe anything they hear on Oprah.
Yeah.
Just anything to shut out the mystery and stop them from thinking. What scientists want is more mystery. It's the opposite. It was a whole monologue.
Yeah, sure.
And it all culminates in teaching how to eat fire. It's all about fire.
I love that. Okay.
And it's the fact of, does it take away the mystery to explain the physics of fire eating, doing that whole thing. And Feynman saw us accidentally. We were playing a 100-seat theater in Hollywood before anybody knew who we were. And he introduced himself as Richard Feynman and almost passed out. I didn't know how big a deal he was, but the deal I thought he was enough.
Yeah.
And he said, I may cry saying it now. Feynman said, your final monologue is what I've been trying to explain to my wife for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And I never got her to understand it.
Oh.
And he said she understood it tonight with you eating that fire. He said it is the most perfect description of science ever.
Oh.
And then 3 weeks later, Feynman showed up with 8 Nobel Prize winners. He signed up, and he came up afterwards and said, this may be the largest concentration of Nobel Prize winners in a magic show ever.
In a magic show. And none of them can figure out the magic.
No, fooled them. Don't fool them. Yeah. But he said that description, that monologue, was what he was trying to say. That it's not closing down mysteries. Yeah. And every time you read this anti-atheist stuff of scientists think they have all the answers, you just go, what are you talking about? Religion people think they have all the answers.
Exactly. They've got all the answers.
And you don't even have a path to all the answers.
Yeah. We don't even know what the questions are.
You don't even have a path there. I mean, if you solve every single thing you're working on right now, you can't even measure that you've gotten closer.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We don't know what the questions are, and we don't. That's one of the things I've always been amused by. We were talking today about the ridiculous Templeton Foundation, that they love this humble approach, that religion is humble. And it always amazed me to say it's humble to assume the universe was created for me. But in fact, and that scientists are arrogant. But what could be more humble than saying, first of all, it's not created for me. Secondly, I don't have all the answers, and I may never have all the answers.
Well, the most important part to me of the scientific revolution, 300 years ago, whatever, is just 3 words. I don't know.
I don't know.
Because no one had ever said that before. No king had ever said that. No philosopher.
You get your head cut off for that, in fact.
I don't know.
Yeah, or burned at the stake. Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. And in fact, you probably heard me say this, maybe, because I've said it so many times, is those are the most important words that teachers and parents should use. I don't know. Hey, let's see if we can figure it out. Because for kids...
Well, Feynman says, I don't know. Maybe nobody knows. Maybe you'll be the first to know.
Exactly. Maybe that's what maybe to the kids, you'll be the first to know. But even more importantly, it was one day I was talking, there was a movie called The Farthest, and it was a premiere of it, and I was talking, and I suddenly realized that for every kid, every time they learn something, it's the first time in the history of the world that it's been understood. Every learning act is an act of discovery. Yeah. And we do such a disservice to kids by making it appear as if it's, remember this is what's known. It should all be an act of discovery. I don't know. Let's figure it out.
And the aha.
It's orgasmic.
Is stronger than sex.
Yeah.
And that's why you have stupid detective shows.
Yeah.
All they are is fake ahas.
Yeah.
There's nothing else. It never really works. You talked about changing your mind. Mm-hmm. You talked about, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I know you've been wanting to get to this because you've been needling me with it for a little while now. You want to get to the climate change thing because you just read a book I wrote several years ago.
Yeah.
Which has an attack at someone who attacked me on climate change.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's no way you can deny that there's climate change. I've completely changed on that. Although completely changed is a little bit confusing because I never went beyond, I don't know.
Yeah.
What bothers me about the climate change thing was the great disservice done by Al Gore of exaggerating.
Yeah, no, it's always...
We have to scare people. We have to do this. And I hate the fact that style affected me, but the kind of people who were talking about it were the kind of people that were so dismissive of people that I loved that I bridled.
You had an emotional reaction.
It was very, very emotional. And also the fact, and this is this is true for everything,
Yeah.
which is why I don't know why it's special, but it feels special. I just don't have, my friend Tim Jennison took a deep dive into climate change. And Tim is really smart. And Tim has the resources to be able to take 6 months and do nothing else.
Okay.
He can do that.
It's a nice job if you can get it.
Yeah. And he said, it's too hard. So I have to admit that I am taking climate change strictly on authority and peer pressure. And saying that sentence bothers me. And yet I do it on everything else.
Yeah, we all do it and everything else. Yeah. But I think you could, let me try and reassure you a little bit. We can't be experts at everything, right? So we have to take into car mechanics. But what you can always ask yourself, if you're a skeptic, is say, okay, look, I don't have the time, resources, or background to be able to necessarily test everything this person tells me. But you can ask yourself the question, what's in it for them? And is there a reason for them to lie to me? Is there a reason for them to fabricate? Is there a reason? And I think those are the kind of questions you can ask.
But that question gets the exact wrong answer that you want from me.
Okay, why?
Because there's a lot of reasons. Any sort of doomsaying of any kind is really, really sexy. Discovering the end of the world and how to fix it makes you a superstar and a hero. There's also always money in it.
Well, no, where's the money? I mean, for most of look, there's a few people who become public figures, and that's a different thing. But there are thousands of scientists who are just doing this, working on their models on a computer model, and they're not, whatever the answer at the end of the thing, they're not going to get more money if it's one thing or another. Yeah. In fact, as if their computer model and it's well done shows something dramatically different than the rest of the crew, and they can defend it, then they become
right
famous.
That's
and
true.
So there's every reason to try and go against the tide in science. And so you know all this already.
I know.
I don't need to.
But I also think, and I guess this is just, I think it was okay when Al Gore was doing all that lying to go, I don't know, for a few months.
Well, no,
for maybe a year.
It's always right to. I can sympathize with that. I think, of course, I can.
The fact that he did.
Well, the fact that people oversimplify. Well, and the question is, do you know it knowingly? I spent a lot of time trying to explain science, and there are lots of reasons why I think it's worthwhile doing. I have very low standards in terms of what I find acceptable. I mean, the bar when I castigate something is just simply this. When I'm explaining something, I know I'm misleading at some level because unless you do the exact mathematics, whatever analogy I'm providing always fails somewhere.
Analogy is never true.
Exactly. But if I'm careful to say where it's not accurate, that's fine. But the one thing that I have no tolerance for, and I know a lot of people, I'm not going to name names, is to knowingly mislead. That's the only thing. If you're writing about science and you get it wrong, fine. Or if someone reads what you've written and gets it wrong. And I remember the first time I wrote a book, my first book, I worked very carefully to try and explain everything. And I have someone say, I love this book. It tells me this. And it had nothing to do with what I was so disheartened. And then I realized, well, I can't control what people get as long as I don't knowingly mislead. And so I think what you have to do when you're simplifying or anything is not knowingly mislead. And then that's the thing I don't know. But that's why I used to be arguing against by string theory so much, is because I think there's every reason for string theorists to want to do string theory. I wrote a book about why it's somewhat well-motivated, but it's claiming that it's the theory of everything, and we're on the cusp of understanding everything when there's no evidence that does any of that is what drove me crazy.
But here's how I got beat up, okay? We did a thing called comic relief for homeless.
Sure,
with Robin Williams, you know what I mean? And there was this whole speech in there that said anyone can become homeless. It's not just if you're mentally ill. It's not just if you're on drugs. It's not just this. This could happen to anybody or your family any day. But I said to Robin, that's not true.
Oh, well.
That's really not true. More a great number of the homeless people do have mental illness issues.
Oh, yeah, sure.
A great number.
Yeah.
It's not true that it hits people at random.
No.
There's no way doing it.
But there's things that can happen to you that you have no control over.
Right. But what I'm talking about is they were saying, well, that helps us have more compassion for people.
Oh, I see.
And I was saying, no. We just tell the truth. These people need help. Let's help them. The exact same thing happened. We started an organization called Broadway Cares, which is for people suffering with AIDS.
Yeah.
And it was in the 80s. It was very early on. And I was in all these meetings. And they would say, we have to stress that this is not gay, this is not drug users, this is everybody, and this is going to be moving into the straight population right away. And I say, well, we don't know that. So far, it is drug users and it is gay, and we can tell people that. And they said, no, we won't get any help from people if we do that. We have to scare everybody with that. And I said, no, we can't. No. And they'd say, and I'm now quoting, so please forgive me, you're not going to get America to care about a bunch of faggots.
Okay.
And I said, well, maybe they do. Maybe there is a love out there. You can't assume. And they said, we have to say it's going to everybody. So there were all these shows in the 80s saying, it's going to move into the straight population this amount of time. And their point of it was we need to help people. It was done for compassion. And then I was asked to do VO when I was on Comedy Central. And they said, this much rainforest is being destroyed every day. But And there was just a series of numbers I was giving. And this studio wasn't ready, which is their only mistake. And I went through and I did the mathematics, the arithmetic, not mathematics, arithmetic, just did it. And I said, this actually doesn't play out. You just said the number of acres and stuff, and I just multiplied it out. It's just wrong. And they said, doesn't matter. And I said, well, no. It does. It kind of does. And they said, well, we got this from it does. I said, well, just let them tell me. Let me call somebody, because I'm not good at this. But there might be something wrong here. And they said, doesn't matter, just do the VO. And I said, fuck you. And I just left.
Well, no, that's you see, that's your damn problem. You're just too honest.
But so
no, I mean, I have to.
But what I'm saying is,
you are one of the most honest people I've ever met.
But what I'm saying is, Al Gore, please, for the love of Christ, you've got something that could be the end of the world. Don't cheat. Do not cheat. Don't say we need a little more fear. Don't say that by the year, whatever he said, by the year 2015, we're going to have 4 inches of water in Central Park, whatever that was he said. I'm making it up. I know that's wrong. So don't say, oh, Penn doesn't know either. I know it's wrong. I made it up. But he said these things here. And all of these people, it's like we've been burned so badly. We had the population bomb that was on the 70s. Paul Ehrlich.
I remember, I was really influenced by a book called Limits to Growth when I was young. And I mean, and it was well-intentioned, by the way.
Of course.
But it's just what happens is technology responds to problems, and so you can't predict very well, which is, by the way, why I never try and predict anything less than 2 billion years in the future. First of all, no one will be around to check my math.
But when we're dealing with it, and also anybody who says, we got to fix climate change, I'm against nuclear power, I just go, you're insane. Because if we got to fix climate change, everything's on the table.
Everything, and most people I know all the real rational people I know say everything's
on the table.
Everything has to be on the table.
Because, we might not get solar or wind. We might not get more than 15 to 20% out of that. We've just got to stop fucking coal. Stop the fucking coal. Now,
And we talked about the fact that people are afraid of the word nuclear. And it's so amazing because, first of all, radioactivity is so much easier to detect than almost any other kind of pollution. It's trivial for me to detect the most minuscule amounts of radioactivity in this room versus any other pollutant. Plus, the number of people that have ever been killed by any nuclear accident in the history compared to the number by coal on every day.
You know how many people 3 Mile Island killed? No. A lot of people, because that was shut down.
Yeah, because it was shut down and then they burned coal. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there you go.
It's like the people that were killed on 9/11 by more people driving cars and having more car accidents.
Yeah.
But it seems like the solution, if there is one, has got to be technological.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's going to, because it's so much, unfortunately, I agree with you completely, because unfortunately, technology is so much easier than changing society. It's just, now,
But
I'll
also,
tell you, I don't think there's going to be a solution in the near term. There are going to be technological mediation. And I mean, and there may be solutions to taking carbon out of the atmosphere. I've been involved in projects, in fact, that try and do that. And I ran programs that actually
there's
explore
one
whether
thing happening over in the Netherlands.
we're already past the point where we're not going to have to adapt.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is think of technological adaptations as well as that. Doesn't, however, the problem, and many of my colleagues say, don't say that, because it suggests to people that we don't have to change.
That's exactly the problem. The other thing is, I was trying to think of an example where conservation worked. They're few and far between. I mean, we were running out of tin. They were trying to save tin. Everything was about tin. Then aluminum came along. Now there's plenty of tin. That's the way it usually.
Well, they're often, the point is technology can be a game changer, and it often is. But having said that, and I guess I was strongly influenced by Amory Lovins, who I've known for a long time, who would point out that, in big, tall skyscrapers in New York City, most of the energy, so their air conditioning in the summer, most of the problem of the air conditioning is that they're overheating the buildings with the lighting. So you're putting all this energy in to do what you could do if you more efficiently designed the lighting that wouldn't put the energy in the first place. That'd be a lot cheaper than building a nuclear power plant, for example, he used to point out. And so those we have to do those kind of rational things. By the way, interestingly, because I've been involved
and let things cost what they really cost. We let gasoline cost what gasoline costs.
Yeah, exactly. And yet people in this country will always be opposed to that. But it's interesting, but because there's also perception. I was involved in an energy conference once, and there was a group in Sweden that had built a house that didn't need heating. This is Sweden in the winter. But they designed passive solar and lighting in such a way that you could live in that house and you'd never need a furnace. No one would buy into this thing because no one believes it's possible. It just seemed irrational. So you've got to overcome that kind of prejudice in so many ways. Once again, it comes back to lying in some sense. Distorting reality is what upset you about climate change. I want to talk about ethics because I think you've talked about ethics a lot in the times I've known you in many different contexts. And something you wrote about sort of surprised me in a way. You're not someone I would call necessarily politically correct, okay?
Yeah.
Yet at the same time, you wrote poignantly about not wanting to offend people. And I found that kind of interesting because in some sense, speaking the truth inevitably offends some people. And so and you said you don't swear in front of your children. I don't know if you still don't.
That's changed.
That's changed?
That's changed. I go through periods. There was a time, Lawrence O'Donnell from MSNBC, Lawrence O'Donnell and Lawrence O'Donnell, of course, has a different image than I do, but Lawrence O'Donnell's from Dorchester.
Okay. I know
Everybody knows Dorchester. Yeah. And Lawrence O'Donnell and I were once in a taxi cab in New York City. In a taxi cab in New York City.
Okay.
And we were talking, and the subject is very important, we were talking about how to get a picture frame to hang in art straight on the wall.
Okay.
That was the discussion.
Okay.
We drove in the taxi cab, and when we finished, the taxi cab driver in New York City said, I've never heard two people swear more in my life. It was, hello, and I go, get the motherfucker level, put the motherfucker levels in, the cocksucker kicking the fucking motherfucker. And we're talking gently about hanging pictures. Right? And I was with another friend of mine who's a record producer named Kramer, who Butthole Surfers and all these other bands. We were all out eating supper. And one of us said, I don't know who, we should just stop swearing.
Oh, okay.
Completely. Yeah. Absolutely. Now, the rules were very simple, okay? We would not ever use euphemisms. Okay. We would say fuck if we meant intercourse.
Okay.
We would say, we would say cock. Not that kind of swearing.
Yeah.
But no goddamn, but also no gosh darn.
Okay.
And no golly.
Yeah,
it was Rob Pike. It was also Rob Pike was there too with four of us. We'll all just stop. And we all did. And it was phenomenal because I'd get emails from Rob Pike going, I banged my toe yesterday. And he said, ouch. He said, I hadn't said ouch in so long, and ouch is a fine word.
It's not a bad word.
Ouch. He said, and we did that for about a year and a half. And it was really illuminating and really fun. And then when my children were born, I realized I was saying God damn and Jesus Christ all the time. And I wanted to stop it for the exact opposite reason people might think you want to. I just didn't want my culture that I was giving to my children to be that steeped in Christianity.
In Christianity, okay.
Yeah,
give it the oxygen.
Yeah, so I just wanted to phase that out. And now I go through phases. It depends a lot on who I'm around, what I'm doing. I was really interested in transgressive humor, and I did a movie, The Aristocrats.
Yeah, sure.
And got it out of my system.
Oh, I see.
Really had no interest. Now when someone like pushes the envelope in offensive comedy, I'm just bored. Because I tried to get 100 people to go as far as they could, and they did. And I'm not saying others should be bored.
But for you.
Okay. I heard enough of it, So there's two kinds of performers that work for me. One is the sociopath who needs nothing from you. Dean Martin being the best example. Bob Dylan being a partial example. Dean Martin, it did not matter when you were in the audience how much you loved him or how much you hated him or booed him. There'd be nothing different from him. And there is something so sexy about that. If you've got someone that you can't touch, that you think that if you insulted them or you kissed them, it would make no difference to them, you just want to hold them and hug them and have them own you forever. I mean, that is one of the sexiest things, I think, especially for men. Especially for men, to men. Okay. It just brings that out very strongly.
I do know. It's funny. It's very enticing. I know a few people who really amazingly don't care. And I mean, who do what they do because they believe what they do, and they don't really care. And it's not just that they're saying they don't care.
They don't.
And I would like to be that way in certain ways.
And also, you don't you feel an attraction?
Yeah, of course.
You want to please them.
Yeah.
And the other kind of person I want to see perform is someone who desperately, like Don Rickles, who just needs every second, or Jerry Lewis, every second needs that kind of confirmation. I have, which I think is a good formula for the way I work. I have the desire to be loved by everyone, offend nobody, but do it on my terms. And that keeps attention going.
Yeah, no, I can say
I can't actually do the glad-handing thing. I try very hard to be complimentary and be polite and give reinforcement, but I try to always mean it. Which is not that hard.
Which is better. No, it's not that hard. And for some people it is, but it's the meaning it makes a lot.
I also know that shock and surprise and out of left field and sexual stuff and this and that will get laughs. It's part of what comedy is. It's not just easy. It's like with George Carlin, has a direct answer to that. When he says people just say using those words are easy. He just says it's just one of the things you can do. Leave everything out there. You don't say in conversation, don't use the word the. Because it's kind of easy. Well, no, but it fits right in there. It's the right thing in there. It does the right thing. People used to say to me, when I used to do Howard Stern all the time.
Yeah, I remember that.
And people would say to me, Howard Stern just doesn't care what people think. And I would go, no, he cares desperately what people think, but he acts anyway. And this gets said so much, but you can't say it too much, I don't think. Bravery is not the absence of fear.
Of course.
Bravery is action in the face of fear.
Absolutely.
So, yes, I want desperately to not offend and everybody like me, and I also want to be brave.
Yeah. Okay. That's beautifully said. I mean, it's beautifully said because I think that is the definition. Knowing that you're going to end up doing something that causes offense. But that's why I was surprised to read, in some sense, that you don't want to offend people, because it was actually Stephen Fry who said, we have in our society this notion that being offended gives you special rights.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a whole different issue.
You don't have special rights if you're
offended.
That's
a whole different issue.
You own that problem.
You do not have any right to not be offended.
Yeah.
That does not mean I want to feel cruel when I do it.
Yeah, exactly.
But those are two entirely different issues.
They really are.
Yeah. And I do very much like to be shocked and offended.
Yeah.
I enjoy those feelings very much.
Yeah.
And I believe that's part of the human experience and part of everything else.
Well, I think it's a character thing. I mean, I'm similar, but I think there are a lot of people who hate either of those.
I guess. Yeah. But I like, what was that?
Yeah.
You know, there's a line in a bit we did years ago where Teller and I, it's one of the only bits we've ever done that takes place not in the theater. Uh-huh. It takes place in it's a playlet that we do within our show, the short play. And we're not Penn and Teller. We're two different characters. Okay. And I discover myself handcuffed to Teller inexplicably. He's a stranger and I'm handcuffed to him. And then the story is about how I deal with being handcuffed to the stranger and how this goes to, and it turns into a magic trick because the handcuffs vanish. Maybe they were never there. But there's one moment where I look at the handcuffs, look at Teller, and I say, this is great. This is terrific. What is this? And I've had like 10 friends say, if I had to sum up all of your life, it would be that one scene. This is great. This is terrific. What is this? They said, the only time we see you excited about something is when you are completely and utterly confused in the dark. Your first reaction to not understanding is a huge grin. Look, this is great. This is terrific. What is this?
That's why, my friend, you would make a great scientist. That's a great way to end, because it's a perfect, it is, for me, it represents what science is all about. It represents what you are all about, and it's one of the reasons I like you so much.
And I like you too, Lawrence.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for coming, Penn.
Thank you.
The Origins podcast is produced by Lawrence Krauss, Nancy Dahl, Amelia Huggins, John and Don Edwards, and Rob Zepps. Directed and edited by Gus and Luke Holwerda. Audio by Thomas Ameson. Web design by Redmond Media Lab. Animation by Tomahawk Visual Effects. And music by Rickolas. To see the full video of this podcast, as well as other bonus content, visit us at patreon.com/originspodcast.